So now that we have our database on the live production server, the next most important thing is to get the files over there as well. We're going to be talking about in this video the most important required file change that we need to make in order to make sure that our new location is communicating with the proper database. Then we're going to talk about how to back up files and then how to transfer those files to a new location. With our database finally imported on our new website, the next thing we need to do is transfer the files over so that we can actually access the new site. Now, before we do that, there's one thing that we need to change, and that is the settings file that tells Drupal where to look for the database, because it's no longer in the same place as it was on our local host. So in order to do that, we need to navigate into our htdocs folder, into the Drupal folder, into Sites, Default, and we need to open the settings file. Now, within this settings file, we're going to scroll down until we see the line that contains the information that houses our database, the username, and the password. Once you've identified the line that has the database, the username, and the password, we need to change these three items as they no longer correspond to the items that are in this file. So the first thing that we're going to change is the database. It's no longer just DRP, but we need to use the database that we set up on our actual production server. We also need to change the username because it's no longer root. It's the one that we created on our live server. And then the password. Now, this is what we need to copy back from that safe location that we've saved it to. And we'll just paste that in there. And then we'll save this file. Now, once we've done this, our actual Drupal site on our local host will no longer work, because we are no longer pointing to the database that we were initially. Now, you could theoretically do a backup of all of these files and then change this, but once we transfer it, we can always put this back. So the next step is to come into an FTP client of some sort. For this, I'm using Files, and I've already FTP'd into my subdomain that I set up from cPanel. Over here we can see that I see the root Drupal file from our htdocs folder. What we want to do is open that folder up, select everything, and transfer the files over. Now, being that Drupal 8 has quite a few files, this may take a little while. And if you've been developing on a live server as opposed to locally, you probably already know that this file transfer process can take quite a while. Once all the files have finished transferring, we can head back to our browser and navigate to our website. Now, when you get here, you might notice that things are a little strange. And I did this on purpose. The reason that things are acting kind of funny and that we can't see any of the images, and if we try to navigate to any of the pages, our URLs are actually incorrect. Now, the reason this is happening is because we didn't flush the cache prior to moving the database over. And I wanted you to see what would happen if we didn't do that. So even trying to log into our website, we can see that it's trying to insert Drupal into our URL where it doesn't belong. So in order to actually get into our site and correct this issue, we need to remove the Drupal word out of the URL. So now once we're here, we can get logged into our website. And we need to head to the area where we can flush the cache to fix all of these issues. Now, that area is in the configuration menu, but this URL is going to be wrong again. So when we click here, we're going to have to modify this URL. And then we're going to scroll down to the Performance tab. We're going to click Performance, and then we're going to click Clear All Caches. And this is going to clear all the cache out of the database, and it's going to fix our problem. Now, once the cache has been cleared, if we try to click back to the site again, it still has that wrong URL because we really only reloaded part of this page. So instead, I'm going to come up here and just modify the URL and go back to the home page. Once we're back on the home page, we can see that all of our images have come back to us, and that if we click on any of the links, they're actually working and taking us to the pages that we need them to take us to. So this is like a big pro tip. Anytime you're moving a website either from a local host to a production server, from a production server to another production server, or anything like that, even from production to local, it's always a good idea to flush the cache prior to making your database backup, and then one more time after you've gotten all of the files and the database transferred over. That's going to ensure that everything is clean and that you have a site that's functioning the way that it's supposed to, as opposed to the way that it looked when we first transferred these files. So that's the process of transferring a website from one location to the other. It's not really that difficult, but there are some key steps that if you miss or mess up, it can really cause a lot of problems. So it's always a good idea to make backups of everything before you start making changes. But that's how you transfer a website. So let's do a quick recap of what we've covered in this section. We talked a little bit about roles and permissions and getting our site ready for users. Then we talked about creating a database backup so that we can transfer it to a new production server. And then we talked about transferring the files and those required file changes and how to back everything up and get everything working properly. In the next section, we're going to be taking a look at the update system and the report system within Drupal 8 so that we can keep our website up to date and current.